expensive elections. And I know, of course, there are those cost drivers. So as a commission, we are aware that, of course, because we live in this country, we are aware of the limitations of the resources because of the hard economic times, not only in Kenya, but globally. So we will look at what we can get from the exchequer. But first and foremost, we will have, as new commissioners, we have to sit with our secretariats to understand the costing element, the cost aspects of our work. So that then, even as we seek funding, whether it's 60 billion, as I've read it in the media, or 100 billion, we know exactly what we are talking about. And as a project manager, one of the things that experiences and skills that I've built over time is that element of costing the various tasks and units. So you attach certain units cost to some things. So we will have to interrogate that budget or come up with a new budget proposal so that then we engage the key stakeholders in that respect. But allow me also to mention, some years back when I was at UNDP, we used to support the IEBC in terms of funding certain processes. And I think I did also Kenyans to be comfortable. UN is an intergovernmental body, so it's not some NGO there trying to influence things in this country. This is an intergovernmental body that has the credibility and the capacity to support. But we as a commission will also look around and say, hey, who else can help us where there are certain funding gaps so that they can plug in. But we need to be very clear on what is it that we are costing, how much, and where are we getting these resources from, so that even when we are talking about the looking around for our partners, we are able to tell them this is where the deficit is and this is where we need their support. So I think that issue. And then, of course, internally, the issue of commissioners and induction. I think that's one of the first assignments we will have to undertake so that everybody is comfortable. When we are talking about budgeting or electoral processes and partnerships, then everybody is on the same page.
How they have accounted for the funds allocated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ethekon, and thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. This time I'd like
to support. But the major issue that has been there at IBC is accountability of the funds. And you will note the Public Accounts Committee reports. If you're to look at them, there are many key audit matters that have been raised. So as the chair, yes, we do know you are not the accounting officer, but you are the head of that institution. You are the head of the electoral management body. And yes, there is an accounting officer, but you are responsible for the commission as a chair. So what mechanism will you put in place, or what strategies will you put in place to ensure that there is accountability in the resources that have been allocated?
Thank you, CPA Tanui. And CPA Tanui, for your information, I attempted to follow your footsteps by studying CPA some years back after high school, but I managed only to reach CPA 2 thereabouts. Then I dropped it.
Yeah, so you can still continue.
Thank you. I think with this enormous task ahead, I may postpone it to a later date. But thank you very much, CPA Tanui. I think the question of accountability, because we have scarce resources in this country, and those institutions entrusted with these resources must understand that even to be an accounting officer of IEBC or the chair, these are positions that you hold in trust for the benefit of the people of Kenya. And one of those duties and obligations imposed upon us by law is to ensure that we account for and we are transparent in a manner in which we expend public resources. So as a chair, as a new chair, I will actually begin by taking a sample of some of these reports, the previous reports, to be able to understand where is the problem. Because the auditors' reports, they have done their assignment thoroughly, and they have pointed out where there are these loopholes. So as a commission, to be able to seal some of these loopholes, we have to understand where the problems comes from, whether it's in procurement, whether it's in disbursements. So we will interrogate these reports, see the clear recommendations of the Auditor General, but also the recommendations of the Public Accounts Committee, so that then we have to set up an implementation framework and timelines on how we are going to address those. It could be that maybe the money has not been lost or eaten. It could be that there are certain weaknesses in terms of the internal processes, and therefore we need to strengthen our financial management and risk management processes and procedures and policies. Number two, I do know in any corporate institution, there is always an internal audit and risk management kind of arrangement or committee that is normally headed by a professional outside there, probably a member of the iceberg. And therefore, I believe the Commission has such a committee, audit and risk. We will look at the role of that committee in terms of helping us to manage some of these financial and fiduciary risks and risks associated with procurement issues, so that then we can seal the loopholes and hopefully move towards getting that unqualified report which we saw, which everybody desires in any corporate institution such as IBC. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me also acknowledge the many qualifications that you have, even the CPA too. So congrats on that. Now, my second question is Hassan, the former chair IBC. Actually, in his book, he talks of to be a chair of the Electoral Commission. He calls them 3 Gs. And one of the 2 Gs that I remember is that you need to have grandchildren, you need to be playing golf. And I was looking at your age, and I was wondering whether you meet any of those criteria. So what do you tell people who are saying you could be young enough to be the chair of IBC?
Thank you, CPA Tandui. Maybe looks are deceiving. I don't know. But at the age of 48, going to 49, I think this is the prime. This is the best age any professional can wish for, to be in positions of higher calling and higher responsibility. So to me, I feel I have the energy, I have the aptitude, the intellectual alertness, I have the necessary tools in terms of education and experience. And looking even forward, I believe if I do a splendid job in this running this commission for the next 6 years, it's basically I'll have something to tell my grandchildren because I'll still be alive to tell them the stories and the younger generations of this country. So for me, this is the right age. Thank you.
Lastly, given the nature of our politics, and you rightly said looks may be deceiving, and I've actually listened to you, I think, for the last 1 hour, and I'm figuring out what transpired at KICC in 2007. You remember when the chair of IBC there, Kivuitu, was at KICC, and just the other day at Bomas of Kenya, and looking at Ethicon today, you know, the presentation that you've had, you're mean, you know, you're humble, and those demonstrations that happen after the elections, people are walking to your office at IBC, and they say they want to see the chair, or you're preparing for 2027 elections, and you have a stakeholder meeting. We are convening in a room like this, and there are players, active players in the elections, and they are demanding. Do you have that stamina to address those presidential candidates that have walked into IBC headquarters, that are confronting you and demanding that you do certain things in a particular way? What can you say of that?
Thank you, sir, for that question. I think it is very serious what in the last, in some of these elections, like the ones you have cited, that those incidents happened in the Republic of Kenya. It is very sad, it's very unfortunate. As proud Kenyans who take this country as our proud home, because we don't have any other country, for us to degenerate to a level where we reach to those, I don't know even how to describe those incidences, but as a country, in as much as I, as an individual chair in that hotspot, will have to think on my feet and how to handle the situation. But I would like also to call upon the entire country, the people of this republic, right from this panel, to think, why do we and how did we get to that level? What are these underlying issues as a society that we must look at for us not to be? For most people, you know, CPH Tanwe and the distinguished panel, with your permission, Chair, even applying for this job is pressure itself. I will speak from my heart. There are those who say, congratulations, go for it. You have what it takes. Then there are those who are saying, no, 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 no. You're going there, you're going to die, they're going to beat you, they're going to do this, all this negativity. And the sum total of it, when I soul search myself, I say, but even if I don't go there, who will do it? Some Kenyan must do this job. Unless we are talking about outsourcing it to somebody in India, somebody in Latin America, or wherever. But if the Constitution says a Kenyan citizen, because that's what's in the law, must do this job, then somebody has to do it. And that's why I'm here precisely, well aware of those pressures. But for me, as an individual, I know I have the stamina, the strength, the mental capacity to withstand those fracas. But as a commission, we'll put in place measures to try, learning from experience, to avoid those measures. Both, of course, security, immediate, but more importantly for me, I will open up this conversation to stakeholders, to the people of Kenya. Why do we have to get to that level of violence in front of cameras, in front of the whole world? That a process that we have taken time and invested a lot of money in, we've cast our vote, we've counted at the polling station. And now at that point, when we now want to declare the final results, then we lapse into that kind of anarchy. So for me, as a chair, and as a new commission, we will begin to work with the electoral stakeholders. There are, of course, the political elites. That's where the problem is. We have to talk to this group and say, you can compete, you can win, but you can also prepare not to win. Because ultimately, it's the will of Kenyans that shall prevail. It is that vote at that polling station that determines your fate. So therefore, we have a conversation on how is it that we can manage situations where I am not the winner. And I would like to inform this distinguished panel of an experience that we had in 2013, where we had the two sides and many other candidates, and we were aware of such kind of things. And that's why it never happened 2013. The reason why it never happened is we working outside there, and I think it was that time the Isaka-san was chair. We supported what you call mediation processes by some of our elders in this country, elders, both men and women, of a certain stature in the private sector, in the public service. We brought them together to be our interlocutors, to be the bridge between IBC and the presidential candidates. And we got some of the close relatives of some of these presidential candidates to speak to them, some of their business partners, to whisper, to say, hey, if in case, in the event that your votes don't reach that threshold, remember, you still have business in this country. You still have your daughter in this country, your grandchildren in this country. You have a country to protect. And therefore, whatever happens, let us take the legal route, which is go file a petition, ventilate the issue at the Supreme Court, whatever the outcome, let the country move on. We did it. And I remember, if you recall, those of us who were there at that time, remember peace charters. We had these candidates, all of them, commit to sign a peace charter. And we publicized it up to the determination by the Supreme Court, where we reminded them, and we reminded Kenyans that so and so, they have committed. They are not going to incite violence, they are not going to do this, but they have accepted they will follow the due process of the law. So that kind of arrangement, those kind of ideas, working with stakeholders, can help us to forestall the unfortunate situations and scenarios we witness in KICC and in Bomas.
Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks. If I was in a privileged place like yourself, I'll have told Tanwi that I grew up in Turkana, so I can manage hard times and situations.
Thank you, Chair, for that.
Okay, let's have our friend Misati.
Thanks so much, Dekon. You have actually explained yourself. I was just doing a follow-up on when Ambassador Koki asked you about the priorities. Maybe you forgot about the issue of voter registration. I want to follow that with my question, where I'm looking at the IPC commissioners and the secretariat. In the Kriegler report, there were some recommendations which were done on how IPC commissioners and the secretariat should operate. May you set right to this panel some of the recommendations that you know of, the information you have, because given that you are going to be the chair of IPC, given an opportunity, you should be able to be fast about those recommendations of the Kriegler report.
Thank you, Mr. Mohati.
Misati.
Mr. Musati.
Misati.
Thank you. I'm just sorry about that. Yeah. The Kriegler report arose as a result of the events of 2007, 2008, in which we experienced that post-election violence. And then, of course, there was that process of internal review of our electoral management bodies. And I think some of the recommendations touched on the roles, the functions of the secretariats vis-a-vis the commissioners. And therefore, there was a recommendation to clearly delineate these roles so that to avoid situations where there are conflicts between the secretariat and the commissioners that can sometimes undermine the credibility of the institution, but also the credibility of the electoral processes. So that's one of the things that I can recall.
Thanks so much. Now, I want to make a follow-up question on the same. Kenyans are watching, and Kenyans are wondering why, for instance, the roles of the IPC commissioners, when they are not there, the gazettement, the issue of gazettement, so that voter registration can go on. What is your take? Because it's actually the Secretariat which should be able to do that. Because why? Is it a problem in the regulations or in the law? Because the law says voter registration should be a continuous process. So Kenyans are wondering, why should IPC staff all over the country be earning even salaries in the first place? What do you think you'll be able to do as a chairman to ensure that this process of voter registration is continuous? Because like now, if the commissioners are not there, they're not doing anything much, why should they not be doing voter registration in the first place?